It's funny, man. I typically start with the same question, but I figured we start a little differently, man. Like, let's start from like the beginning. Like, where did you grow up? Where were you from?
Yeah, so I was born in Nicaragua. I came
Oh,
here at a young age to the United States. Obviously, in Nicaragua there was turmoil, and my parents came here for a better quality of life. There was the revolution. The Sandinistas took it over. I think it's important that people understand that we came to this country not because we didn't like our own country. It's really tough for my parents at that age to leave their country, come to the United States, assimilate, and then that's my first generation. So I grew up in the Bay Area. So I'm a hardcore Bay Area. People say California, no, Bay Area. That's like you guys be claiming Los Barrios and the Bronx and what have you. We claim the Bay. We're not Southern California. And so yeah, Chinese Nicaraguan. Both of my grandfathers, Chino, se fueron y se casaron con, plantaron bandera in Nicaragua, and that's why I speak Spanish. English is a second language. I'm a proud ESL alumni. Uh,
hey,
and that's me, bro. Armando, Tito, Tam.
interesting, man. How many people when you got to the Bay? Like, first of all, what was that like when you even got to the Bay? Because that's completely different from where you grew up. And then, what age did you get here too?
I got here when I was 4 or 5 years
Okay.
old. It was, I didn't know what anything was other than the fact that, typical Latinos in the 80s, we had multi-families in the household. So I had my abuela, my tia, my cousins in a 3 or 4 bedroom. And I will say that I had a unique experience because obviously I have no accent. So my mother, was an English teacher in Nicaragua. So we come here and, my father did some labor and then moved on. But growing up in a household with multi-families, you don't really get the experience of growing up on the streets. It's like Dave Chappelle said it best. I wasn't poor enough to be from the hood, but I definitely knew I wasn't wealthy enough to not be in the hood. And I say that because my surroundings didn't impact me as much as it could have until I got older. So when you're young, you have the love at the house. You go to school, you get made fun of. I don't really dwell on it because I'd come home to cousins, to tias, to abuelas, and things like that. And remember, my father was a karateka in Nicaragua. So at a young age, I was put in martial arts because he wanted his son to be a karateka and defend himself. So I guess I didn't deal with some of the hardships that what you experience today, which is very important. Being an ESL and being tall and being, knowing how to defend myself, I would actually back then defend what I look at now as bullying and borderline racism, if you look back at it. But I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood, which was very poor. Next door neighbors were, drug dealers, and there was Salvadorians, there was Vietnamese, there was Persians. So it was pretty cool that, 15 years later as an adult, it's not foreign to me to deal with different nationalities. It's not foreign with me to talk to someone to say, you don't know what it is to grow up poor. All right, we grew up in the same neighborhood. It's just that
Yeah.
I was very fortunate to have multifamily, which now we make fun of Latinos, 10 in a house. And those are the best times of my life.
Yeah. Well, not only that, I feel like a lot of times, like you may have like 10 people in your house, but then other people from like Nicaragua may come through. Cause like in my grandma's house, it's like the hotel. Like it's like the first stop where people come from Dominican Republic just to visit. Sometimes they stay over for like way too long. And then it's like you got to give up your room. It's like a whole ordeal.
Well, share rooms, man. I had a bunk bed and another bed for 3 of us in one room with Michael Jackson 5 posters and Air Jordan. It's like your grandma's house was the original Airbnb before Airbnb was capitalized by Los Blancos. So I know exactly what you mean because when a new member came from the family, they would be at our house. And my mom was like incubating, come here, learn the language, los papeles, and get a job and move on. I got to credit my mom for helping facilitate that to where we're at today.
Yeah. And let's go back to like that schooling experience, right? Like this is brand new to you and you're like at such an early age. Like what were some of those early experiences where you said like you were being made fun of, which everyone gets made fun of as a kid?
Yeah. Listen, when you come into this country, not through the traditional schooling, they put you in ESL because you come from another country. They don't even check your test. No te dan, hey, habla el idioma. They don't do that. So they put you in ESL. And what happens is, listen, man, I'm going to be real, but I think it's going to be funny. They put me in a small yellow bus. We wouldn't come in at 8 o'clock with everybody else, por los blanquitos. I was like, okay, ESL, okay, students with different needs. And so we'd show up late. And everyone at that age, when you're the later students, those kids are like, those are like, and they probably would say mean things. And I
Yeah.
won't even name those names because I think they're too fucking ugly. Pero that's what it was. You knew you were always going to be different because you would walk in late, even though we weren't different. That's just the way society has set you up. And so growing up there would be different. Obviously, the language barrier. So, for a couple of years, I mispronounced white household names like Yosemite. I would look at it and be like, where's Yosemite?
Yeah.
Or someone's name is Sean, Sean. I'm like, who's seen? And
Mhm.
so you get laughed at. But again, I'm very fortunate because what would be looked at as being made fun of, I would go home and I would be making, helping my mom make nacatamales, the masas that she used to make to sell on the weekends. I would be putting karate. I would be listening to my grandma. And so I guess I never had the time to really absorb the potential jabs that society was giving you at that age. But I see that it does exist now, and I'm very fortunate because now there's a lot of single parenting and there's a lot of dual parents that have to work, and the kids have to grow up kind of fencing themselves with society. So I could see that. But for me, gracias a Dios, that my parents, man, they allowed me to protect myself, to give myself a thick skin to deal with that. I was an ugly little kid. I had big ears, flaco, chino, I was always taller than everybody. So every time I would go trick-or-treating with people my age, they would be like, aren't you too old? Because, I was always the tall kid. They put me in karate martial arts with my age group, but because I was bigger, I would do really good. And I get booed, at 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, getting booed by like a crowd full of people because I would beat up somebody that they thought I was older than, they were younger than me. So those were the things about as hard as I had to deal with growing up until I became a man.
Bro, that is, shout out to your parents, man, because it takes a certain level of humility, confidence, like I can't think of the word, like just like calmness for you to like hear all these things and then just remember like, yo, I got so much love at home. Like, I don't care about any of this, man. Like, what were some of the things that they taught you that just like got that into you so early?
Well, so my mother, when I used to get in trouble, she wouldn't hit me. She'd make me write sentences, right?
Really?
So yeah, so that's how I became kind of financially literate. My father was about defending yourself. So I got lucky that, I was really good basketball player. I wanted to compete. I love hoops. I'm launching a sports agency. And you and I talked about that, but my father never went to that stuff. So my father was a father. He wasn't my best friend.
Mm.
My father was like, vos sos un caballero, sos un macho, sos un hombre, no seas payaso. And then my mother would be like, I'm not going to cut you any breaks either. You're going to have rules. You want allowance? You better start doing some chores. So it never was like, hijo, I always say that the best mentors are not the ones that talk to you, are the ones that you're able to spend time with and see how they do it. My mother
Mm.
was busy. She was an executive. She had gone to college and she also had another business. It wasn't that, I think it's because they're always were hardworking folks. They had a goal to assimilate in this country, to raise us, and to be financially fit. And my father, same thing. My father didn't have the education as my mother, but he had the same work ethic. So I just think that if you spend time with people, you become, an average of who they are. And I
Yeah.
always saw that. It wasn't until my older years that my dad would say his philosophy. But if I were to ask him, Papi, deme unos consejos for that, he would look at me like, you should know better. Kind of like, we don't have that relationship, kid. Don't think I'm gonna mentor you. But he led by example. My dad's an OG. Karateka, didn't finish school, was the badass in the neighborhood, but he never told me that. It was always his friends when we go visit Nicaragua. Tu papá era esto, tu papá el día que vos naciste dejó hacer esto. And I'm like, my dad will always tell me, I don't care how much money you make, I don't care what you do, hay que ser humilde, hijo. And that's like the best piece of advice my dad ever gives me that I still get emotional because, you know me, I'm trying to strive to do this and do it for the peoples. My dad's just like, whenever you achieve that, hay que ser humilde, just because I guess I didn't fail for a long time, and so that's built up success, which ultimately is a setback because when you want to launch something new, because you don't have the failure, that fear of failure will always linger. you know. So yeah, nothing, hijo, va a hacer esto, or write a book. Nah, it was just watching my mom and dad. My mom was, listen, my mom was the epitome of sometimes the king is a woman, you know.
Yeah.
Strong. When I had cancer surgery, I came down. I remember I thought my mom was gonna cry. She wasn't crying, you know. And she was just, and I thought, oh, I'm a kid, so I'm like, how come my mom's not crying? Does she not love me? So I was the wimp, but my mother was fuerte, you know, and I don't know where she got that from, but to this day, she's one of the strongest people I know.
Wow. That reminds me, well, first of all, it's so interesting that you said humble, because I said humble, like even before I knew like anything that your dad taught you, but you could just tell in those stories how humble you were as a kid. And it's
Yeah,
crazy because I think of my mom the same way. Not that she was like any, executive or any sort of like, I don't think she achieved like the same level of success that your mom did, but as far as being that role model from like, for example, like I've never seen my mom cry ever. And like
yeah,
even when even when her father passed away, didn't see her cry. And like part of me thinks it's like her not trying to show me that side of herself, and like her just trying to continue showing me that, like, because I didn't have a father in my life growing up, so I feel like in many ways she tried to like play both roles.
yeah.
But yeah, it just made me think about her.
She did a good job. Listen, you're one of the brightest people I've met, and you know, if you and I would have met 10, 15 years ago, we could even change the game even more. So you got, shout out to your mom for that, because she had to play both roles. You know, I see my mom.
Thanks, man.
I haven't even seen my mom cry. I heard her cry one time when her sister passed, my tia. But this, let me tell you, my mom. Hey, that's why I said the king is sometimes a woman. Is one of the quotes that I think of your mother and I think of my mom.
Yeah, shout out to them, man. And it sounds like when you came home to all this love, like there were so many different things going on, right? And it's so interesting because I was telling my boy about you, and I was like, he was like, "Oh, what does he do?" And I was like, "Yo, honestly, I have no fucking clue, man." You go to his page, and there's like literally 1,000 things from him, from him at a wine distributor to him cooking to him on stage presenting, and I'm just like, "Yo, what? Who?" To him like with Will Smith, I'm just like, "Yo, who is this?" He's like the Dos Equis guy. I'm just
You
but it's
know,
interesting, like when you were talking about like growing up, you said like your mom was this executive, but she was also like really into the kitchen as well, right? And I know like culinary is had such a big impact in your life, but just like when you were growing up and you thought about like your future, like what were you thinking at the time?
I was always taught to, you know, make money, right? And it's not that you're chasing the money. It wasn't that. It was just through hard work. So again, my dad had an 8 to 5, then he had a contracting gig on the side that he has his own company. And he didn't tell me, hey, I'm making good money. It wasn't until I got older that he's like, hey, we're retiring. Here's our, you know, our assets and our estate planning, right? Which is an uncomfortable conversation for Latinos. Like,
Mm,
hey, if I were to pass, esto es lo que va a pasar. And I hated that shit. I still have that email. I haven't even opened it.
mm,
Same thing with my mom. She worked in the insurance industry as an executive, and then she had her catering business. So growing up, I would work the 8 to 5. I would go to college, and then I would have a side hustle. I used to run nightclubs. I used to teach salsa lessons, you know. And I remember going into, like, you know, how you inspire me a lot. Going to corporate America, sometimes when people, they want your best performance, your best output, and they see you doing other things, and they don't think you're committed. And I remember I
mm,
had to tell one of my bosses at the time, who's now one of my mentors, my brothers, and sometimes in some businesses, he's my partner. I said, it's not that I'm not committed. It's that I've always been raised to have 2 or 3 different things, because you got to save to make a living. You got to save for a rainy day, and you got to save for building wealth. Now, that I think is a missing link that we have to bring back in today's society. Esa mentalidad that, hey, you got to work. Now, we have social media now, we didn't have back then. So I probably would have gotten distracted. Ahí, en esos tiempos, trabajar duro, ahorrar, pensar en retiramiento y la familia. So I think that the social media today, we have to learn how to use. What's your favorite dish?
my favorite dish? I'm gonna go
Yeah.
straight to dessert. Tres leche.
Okay, now social media is like tres leche. If you eat that shit every day, it's not healthy. So we have to learn how to moderate social media to make it jive with our, you know, ourselves. And so anyway, so that's what it was. As a young age, I saw my parents do that, and I always wanted to do that because I was able to make a living, to pay the bills, to travel, to the fashion that I like, and it's because of that mentality. You know, even if you got a full-time gig, you should press on, because when you retire, you got to have something to do, you know. And so at a young age, that's what it was.
Yeah, and it sounded like there was some clash as far as some of those early experiences when you were thinking
Corporate
about your
America.
identity and what you wanted to do, and specifically in corporate America. Like, what was that like experience-wise?
So I went from an entrepreneur, or you know, having my own businesses, to now adjusting to the corporate and moving up that ladder for two reasons. One, you want to grow as a person. So like one of the things like I absorb from you is working that corporate ladder, because there are different things. There is a different behavior. There is a different tone. I'm 6'3", you know, 220, and and again, my personality that you see on the internet is not always who I am. Like I'm actually an introvert, but people are like, "Nah, man, nah, you're not." And I'm like, "You don't understand. What I do is my job. It's not
I didn't know that.
who." Oh yeah, no, I'm an introvert. But someone said to me the other day, "I believe you're an introvert, even though 99% don't believe you're an introvert. It's because the content you're choosing to create is a different persona." I love cooking, but I have to do it because I have to be in front of the camera now, because for so long the people didn't make an impact that should have, you know. And so agencies are telling me, "Yo, you got to do it. You feel comfortable." I feel comfortable because I wanted to produce 20 rock stars, so that's why I'm doing more of that.
Mhm.
But going into corporate America, back to the original question, I had to learn that. Hey, listen, there was complaints to HR. You know, there was laughing at me versus laughing with me. So I had a couple of those moments. Going into corporate America structure, if you don't have a degree, you know, they kind of look at you differently. So I had to overcome that. So I rarely like to talk about como me jodieron, you know, and you're actually bringing that out of me, because it's a story that needs to be told. Because when
Mhm.
you hear other people's stories, more people can relate, and it makes it that much easier. So I'm actually shout out to all my viewers later. They're gonna watch this. They're gonna, yo, shout out to Plural for making Armando be vulnerable. But yeah, I had the complaints. I no education, no, rarely have a filter. So I had to learn how to adjust that, because I knew that at some point when I deal with the CEOs of Nike or AT&T or, you know, Apple, I'm gonna have to speak their game too. I got to
Mhm.
walk their streets just the way I expect people on the streets to walk the walk before they come to me. And so I have to accept it, and I killed it, and I'm still learning. I'm at 30-40% where I want to be, but you know, I get to deal with some pretty big cats, and I'm very proud of, because I'm not educated, an immigrant kid, and I'm proud of that. But I'm not complacent. I got to move up.
Yeah, it's so weird too because, and I've heard that I've heard that, I don't know if you classify it as an insecurity, but other guests have mentioned that as an insecurity. Like, I'm forgetting the guest name, but she didn't have a college degree, and she said like, yeah, for till this day, like she's still so insecure about it, but she's even at the point where she's a manager, but still, although she's accomplished so many things, it's still one of those things that is
Yeah.
not like it's sort of like a qualifier in her head that is sort of like a status. But it's so interesting too because if you look at certain industries, like a lot, like white males get glorified if they drop out of school. They're
Yeah.
like college dropout that then built X, Y, and Z company. It's not like that's the headline. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And for us, it's we don't get glorified.
You were
We get
expected to fail. You were expected to fail. So you're failing to. I will say this: how you
we get
overcome
penalized. We get
insecurity.
penalized for it.
Yeah, yeah, or you know, it's status quo. I will say this though: by the way to overcome insecurity is by preparing yourself and performing. And I didn't know that. So it's not like I know it all, but I've been through
Mhm.
that, right? So when I talk to an executive now who wants to get into the Hispanic market or the US Latino market, because I have the corporate talk, because I have the case studies of how others have failed, it now gives me that equity to say, okay, Armando's got the street cred because
Yeah.
I've prepared myself. I actually have to, you know, when I speak to people, executives, I still write bullet points, and I make sure I don't use the but and I make
Mhm.
sure that whatever I'm going to recommend, I've got facts to back it up. So that's how I learned to overcome insecurity. Um, and I listen, my first insecure moment wasn't even corporate America. That's just annoyance that people look at you like you're dumb. But because I have the
Yeah.
self-confidence, I was like bouncing it off. Okay, I'm gonna beat you at your game. I'm not gonna be this emotional Latino and come at you because you're looking down on me because you went to Berkeley and I didn't. You know,
Yeah.
so that's something there because that's minute. But the biggest moment I interviewed the former Secretary of HUD, kitchen cabinet for Bill Clinton, Henry Cisneros.
Mhm.
He was on Latino, the Latino stuff on HBO. He
Mhm.
is one of the most prominent businessmen in the country, obviously educated, and I remember right there, oh, Latino list, that's what it was. And I remember, all right, I can't go in there looking, like, well, you actually bring out the reality, and that's like, I couldn't go in there who I was. I was actually seeing if he would approve of me, because I was, after our first interaction, you and I was like, when did I feel that way? And I had to dig deep, and it was that. I remember I had to go in with the solid navy. I had to go with the herringbone, suit because it's
Solid
wealthy.
Navy.
Yeah, solid navy pants. You the pictures on my Instagram. Herringbone. I might put it now fast like fire because herringbone Brioni. Because if he asked me a question, I can't be rocking an express suit. And I had to have done research on him because you're in DC, right? So it'd be if I'm at
Yeah.
the NBA pre-draft, ceremony, yeah, you gotta look cool. But I remember that I used to wear. Right now, I'm wearing a Rollie diamonds to that leather band, and then I had to make sure I knew a little bit about him because I didn't go to college. If he's gonna go somewhere out, I'm gonna shift him over for this. And it was a great interview because at the end of the interview, he said two things. He says, one, I really enjoyed this interview. More than others. And I want to be as cool as you one day so I can pull off wearing those socks. The only thing I jacked up on, I had bright socks. But Henry had said that. And, at the time, Henry Cisneros, he still is a powerful Latino leader. But I kind of was like, oh, if I can get that kind of, attention from him, or feedback, then I'm doing something good. But yeah, there was a lot. For every one success story, there's 10 others that you've made me reflect like, okay, that was probably looking at me like I was ignorant. That was probably some
Mhm.
racist shit that they were looking at me. And that was probably some, like you said, white people, they quit college, they get glorified. Us, it's like, boom, so you've made me reflect on that. And that's the story right there.
Yeah. Now that validation is sometimes like what we need to feel the confidence from whoever it is.
You need that. You need that, absolutely.
And it's so interesting too, because um like people talk about college like it's the easiest thing to get into and also pay for. Bro, that shit is so expensive. The only reason I went to the school that I did is because I got a scholarship for it. The only reason I got a scholarship for it is because my mom didn't make any money. But
Yep.
like looking back, I always think about like, what if I have kids and like what I want them to go to college and like, what does that plan even look like? I don't
Oh,
know,
you
man.
said
Like it's so
you
expensive.
but you said it right there. What does that plan even look like?
Mhm.
Looking at it now, yeah, you go to college unless you're prepared with a plan, and your parents, like, it was really tough
Mhm.
because your mom was first generation, so was my parents. So they're not going to say, hijo, go to college for this, because when you get out, it's an industry you can make $150,000, $200,000 starting. No te dicen eso. And they don't even do it in college. Listen, I'm half Chinese and Nicaraguan. One of the dopest shit is I learned from the Chinese people, right? So my cousin, you Berkeley, Stanford, enterprise with Bill Gates, all this kind of stuff. And they said this at one point. They said, Tito, we admire you. I said, I admire you guys. You guys are smart, went to college, whatever. My mom still holds that against me. I didn't go to college. And they said, here's what college doesn't teach you. College doesn't teach you the ability to change.
Mhm.
You can have all that money, what you just said, in debt 3 years into your career that you didn't know, you may not like it. Now you've got debt and you've got the pressure, and how do you change? I'm not knocking college. My kids are going to go to college, but I'm going to have a plan because of what you just said right there. You're going to go to college, perfect. You can minor in whatever the hell you want to do, happiness. But let's go interview 20 people that you kind of admire, and let's see what college they went to and what topics they went. Because it's worth that risk. When you're studying in law, you could become a commentator on politics because there's no Latinos commentating on CNN or Fox que no sean como mierda, and you can have your own firm. You can represent athletes. No one's telling our people that,
Yeah.
as an example, if you're going to go to college, go for something. If you're going to go to college for culinary school, Perfect. Let me have a plan. Let me interview some chefs that are making $500,000,
Yeah.
because I think that's what we're going to have to do for our youth.
Yeah, 100%. I didn't have that guidance going into it. I mean, similar to you when I asked you like what did you want to do when you grew up essentially, and you were like make money, I said the same thing. I was like literally what can I study to go make money? I didn't think about like what I was interested in because I didn't have that luxury
Why
like a
did you
lot of
think
people have.
like that? Why did you think like that? Make money.
Because I didn't want to keep living in the projects like I grew up.
And I think, and I'll give you props because that necessity, that desire is what established that. So you're very fortunate to have thought like that. And that's why your listeners should be listening to that, because if you lead in today with wanting to make money, it's like we're looked down upon,
Yeah.
And the money is not to make money. It's to have options. It's to progress.
Mhm.
It's like the relay of life. Like your parents came from DR, my parents came from Nicaragua, not to be in the same situation. Why are you going to work so hard that they sacrifice that for you to be in the same situation? They didn't come here for that, you know.
Yeah.
But that's one thing our Latino community I want is for them to start saying, I want to make money and I want to make change. And if I can make money and create change and impact at the same time, man, you could die tomorrow a leader and not having to, get shot or die like most leaders. They become leaders when they die, right? When they get shot. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to be a legend like Biggie, shot. Let me just be a legend, living legend.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, for me, like money isn't just about like having shit in the bank account. For me, it's like, for me, money equals opportunities and freedom, not only for me, but for people around me. And it's so interesting too, man. You mentioned like for every one positive incident, as far as like that interview example where you killed it, like there are potentially not so positive incidents. You know what I mean? Like any of those incidents come to mind that really like shaped your perception of what like corporate America could be like?
It's yeah. I'll tell you the look, man. I think Dave Chappelle hit it on the money when he said he quit. He took a time off from comedy. He says the moment I
Mm.
saw a room laughing at me versus laughing with me, he stopped, and he gave those people the power for him to stop, and he benefited. And thankfully for people like you and I, that he got back on track, because I look at those models for me because I know I'm gonna get hit. Life isn't perfect, but several instances is when I'm in an executive room and I feel like I'll say something, or it could be predetermined in their mind because I don't go to college. I don't bring in what the other people. I always tell people, be the brokest and dumbest in the room, and sometimes it's a big knockout for me because I see the look they give me sometimes. I see the look they give me, like this kid's from the hood, or this guy is. I don't know if I'd have him talking to the CEO of Nike, whatever. And I think that two or three instances in my life, and luckily I took it like, you know what? How could I have done better? I wasn't angry. I can't change them, but I can change my outcome. But I remember being in those boardrooms and just kind of like, what? Do you even belong? How are you even in here? And I have to remind myself there's a reason why I'm there. Like I said, I've had it wasn't this instant, but it's the kind of level, because I want people to understand, like, I'll be in a room with Robert Rodriguez, a CEO that is the first Latino CEO of 4 Fortune 400 international companies, one of the most influential CEOs in housing, Zoe Saldana, and a bunch of LA agencies, and that's the kind of stuff that I've been very fortunate to learn from, to create my opportunity, and to never let it get to my head, and so I do have that kind of pressure. I don't have the luxury to be the tallest midget in the room, but and even then, like, compliments, thank you, and I move on. I think compliments is actually your biggest setback for keeping on learning, so Henry Cisneros to Hollywood to dealing with, I didn't go to college. I got to deal with attorneys now when I'm doing these deals with athletes. I have to deal with attorneys, man. And you think attorneys look at you the same way if you're not an attorney?
Nah.
Negotiating. I'm a 15, 20-year veteran G in real estate negotiation. That don't mean shit when you have some kid, from some Ivy League school who became an attorney, who's now an agent, and you got to deal with them. I know negotiation. I know sales. I know the business. I know what plural, the communication to the U.S. Latino market. Don't matter if you don't have that law degree in their eyes. And I
Mhm.
have to overcome that. And I give that analogy as like a heavyweight fight to be Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield. Evander didn't knock him out. Evander had to lose the majority of the rounds to tire out Mike Tyson. And that's the way I look at when I talk to an executive that is pounding me down, or an attorney that's pounding me down. because I've got to get that net result and get that contract, get that deal, get that win. It's mentally challenging. And unfortunately, I fucking love I love the energy. I love what do you call that? Anyways, I love that.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting, man. It's so interesting too, because some people think that it's just about like things being said to us, right? But in your case, like it could just be a look that you can't really explain.
Oh yeah,
And sometimes, like for me, I've had that look and I'm just like, yo, am I crazy? Am I going crazy? Is he giving me that look? But you
100%.
but you
You're
know what
young.
it is.
You're a younger version of me. That it's never someone says anything, because let's face it, I also have the corporate etiquette, and but it's the look that they give you could be worse than the things they say to you.
Yeah.
It's like the disappointment your parents will give you, right? Your dad doesn't have to say, "Oye, pa ver," your mom can say, "Tú te jodiste." It's that look of disappointment that hurts, but a look of being looked down upon, that could really set someone back, and so I've learned, I researched you a lot, and I admire everything you've done through corporate America, relevant America, you know, um, and I know there's a lot to learn. Just yesterday, I was talking to this young kid who used to work and manage, VCs and hedge fund Latino. He's like, I made them a lot of money. Now I'm going to start my own. And, again, the resources, I've always told you about your agency and what I have with corporates. And then you got VCs and you get all those having dinner, man, having some mango and morir soñando. It's a wrap.
Facts, man. Culture and food brings everybody together, man. And I love to ask, man, because it sounds like, you experienced that for a while, positive, negative experiences, but then it sounds like you pivoted to do more of some of the things that you really enjoyed or some passion projects. And
You're,
am
you're,
I correct?
you're 100% on the money. I've never really opened up to people, just because that's actually my downfall, right? But recently, hanging out with you and stuff, that's correct. So I've been in an industry where I've, real estate and making money and investing in businesses that weren't so much passions of mine, because it's what they provided for me, a good living, to be able to travel, my hobbies, all that stuff. But as I get older, if I die tomorrow, I want to do what I love to do. So I'm going to take what I've learned here and apply it to the cultural part, And, I used to be coined, hey, Armando's like the king of all things Latino, because if you're going to get into sales, get into real estate, it's the highest ticketed revenue that you can do legally, right? So you build that, but being a realtor is not really sexy, right? You got to go out there and you got to give up weekends and what have you. You got to make a lot of money and you got to build a team. You got to build a company. And then what do you got? You're going to have a family. You're going to have partners. What do you got? What do you love to do? Because if you just work the rest of your life, you're going to let life pass you by. So I've taken 15, 20 years of how I've scaled those businesses, and now I'm dabbing into things that I love. We're launching a sports agency with two partners of mine representing majority Latino American talent. So the picture you saw on my IG recently, those kids are going to be D1 or future NBA draft picks. And those kids are 16, 15 years old. They don't even speak English. Like literally they're coming from Panama, Colombia, Mexico. And I'm like, okay, I'm passionate. I love basketball, but if I didn't love basketball, I love the fact that we can rewrite the narrative for Latinos in America. Even if they don't make it to, MJ or LeBron status, they're going to be an MJ or LeBron back in their family, in their country that is a third world country, Comidazo, obviously, that's my passion. Food and music, upscale, again, rewriting the narrative, and showcasing chefs and winemakers of color. Because it's usually they're there to check the box. You know that, right? They check the box and shit. I want to be main stage, and I want to change these people's lives because they're just as talented. Every high-end restaurant in America will have a 90% staff Latinos,
Yeah.
So why put them in the back? And it creates opportunity for a better quality of life for them. So the podcast, people like you, man, I saw you, I was like, okay. Because I knew through corporate, all the money that I've seen some people spend on agencies that didn't work because they thought connecting with Latinos was translating, and I could say that because you are an agency, but I dealt with 12 agencies to pitch us. And I'm like, that's whack, dog. But they have something you and I want to get, the funding, the structure. And so I want to learn from that. As much as I discredit them, no, I appreciate them because I learn so that we can make a winning formula from what they continue to fail. And they're going to continue to fail because the face of Latinos is like what you and I look like.
I
You know,
mean,
so
yeah.
go ahead.
Now I was gonna say that's a lot of what I'm doing. I mean, I love a lot of the places that I have worked, but at the end of the day, like I want to take those learnings and apply it to my own things and my own businesses in the future, man.
I
And
told you you could have the baddest agency out there because you're a smart dude. You know how to communicate. Now we just got to get you in front of those big companies because they want to spend money on the U.S. Latino market, but they don't know. Like, okay, we're in Miami, so we're gonna put Pitbull. Oh, you're in Mexico, so we'll get. I mean, I'm like, come on, bro. Go on your playlist. That tells you a lot. Go on someone's social media. That tells you a lot about who you are. And so you have an opportunity. I was telling people about your art. I said, yo, I'm gonna get this artist. I want to get him down to Comidazo because I think in society, you made me look smarter. I was like, in society, people want to look a certain way. I go, this kid does art where how would you look like if you didn't have that wall to be validated by? You have AOC with braids. You got the Supreme Corte Supremo, Sonia Sotomayor, some of the bearded Yanks, and they were like, yo, that's deep. I said, exactly. But we have to promote ourselves. And I don't want to be like the people like, oh, we got to support. No, you got talent. So we have to put it out because I want to rewrite the way people look at Latinos today. I don't call it nuevos Latinos. Los Latinos de hoy, this is who we are. This is who we are. Those kids, Panama, Colombia, what do you listen to? Rap, Drake. Okay,
yeah.
cool. Just because you're not going to listen to Vallenato because you're from Colombia, and that's the way agencies think. Oh, let's put on the color. Let's put on the, the fucking Grupo Nietzsche and shit. Or Guayacan. No, these kids. And so you can learn a lot by just listening. And agencies don't do that.
Nah, 100%, man. First of all, I appreciate that. And I just want to be clear that I did not pay you to say that about me because that was beautiful.
No, game recognized. Look, I'm from the Bay. Game recognized game.
No, I appreciate that, man. And it's so interesting too, man, because you're at a point where you are doing a lot of the same project. I'm doing a lot of projects that you're like really passionate about, and I feel like you're coming into like your more authentic self. But at the same time, like I'm wondering, at the same time, like you still meet with some of these executives, but now it's on your own terms. But do you still feel that sense of insecurity and a little bit of self-doubt?
Well, I'm older than you. So I have probably 15 years of experience. There will always be that. There will always be that. I laugh because, again, I've never had a stranger just really kind of know a lot about me the way you do. So one, I'm older, so I'm going to have less. Two, it's going to exist. So I'm going to give you a specific example. If anything that we've learned from Donald Trump is to be more informed. So now I've got to be some kid from Nicaragua, sin colegio, that was in real estate, that performed in entertainment. I didn't go to have a law degree. Now I actually do. If I want to rewrite the narrative, I've got to be relevant in sports, in food, in music, in culture, and fucking politics. So when I'm dealing with a sitting senator or congressman, I'm going to have to deal with the same looking it down upon, right? So I am still feeling insecure as to what you say, but what I said in the beginning of the show is I overcome insecurity by preparation, by doing research. If I'm going to sit with, I've had a Zoom with a senator out of Connecticut, man, Rosenblum, shout out to him. Listen, he's active. He's one of the first to stop the whole soliciting of sex trafficking on Craigslist. He was the first one to kind of sue, a lot of the social media that would fringe upon people of color. I had that information, so it helped me prep to develop a good product, but now an existing relationship. Because, and so that's a specific example. So I have to deal with congressmen and senators, and so those insecurities still come by. Those are all former attorneys. Again, maybe it's the attorney shit, but it's former attorneys. So yeah, I still deal with the insecurity. But remember, everyone watching this show, the way you overcome insecurity, preparation, and be ready to get knocked down, so it won't happen again. So yeah. Senators, there's only 100 in the country. I've probably interviewed 2 or 3, but all three of them have said, let's get Armando to help us put together a business roundtable for the community. I probably interviewed or broke bread with a dozen congressmen and congresswomen, all game. So I'm just building momentum, right? Building momentum, because I have to grow. If we're going to rewrite the narrative, if I'm going to sit across with you, you know, we're going to hang out with the CEO of Walmart or Target, we have to say, yeah, we don't just come from the cultural piece. We come from the policy piece. We come from the entertainment piece. We come from the youth. You know, the most powerful thing about Latino, que somos los más jóvenes, and we're growing much faster. And, you know, with streaming, with Spotify, it's just made us more cool. And so we have to be ready. We're going to become cool. We got to be intelligent too. Don't act a fool, you know? And so that's why I love being in the game with you now. And folks like you, were because I was behind the scenes producing. Now I got to get out of my shell, and I got to be open to criticism, bro. Sometimes I get shit like, you know, when I got in front of, like, I was going to call you the other day, I was like, yo, damn, this person went off on me. But you gotta let it flow. People are like that.
Yeah, I think that's the important message that I'm glad you mentioned, is that this shit is going to keep happening. You know what I mean? Like, people are going to continue looking down upon us, but what you said, which was really important, is like, I can't control how other people react. Like, I can only control how I come to the table and like my authenticity. And it's so interesting when I think about like who you are and who you've been like explaining about yourself. Like, some of these like early things in childhood like still remain in you, but so many things about you in your childhood, or like even you in those first corporate America spaces, have changed. You know what I mean? Like, some things
Yeah.
still remain, but some things have changed. Like, when you think about authenticity and like your authentic self, like, how would you describe it? What comes to mind for you?
Well, I got lucky. One, I want to say that I'm always going to have that insecurity, that anger, right? But I've channeled that anger to create change, to create a movement, right? So be the master of filling in the blanks is what I heard yesterday, right? So I use anger instead of being mad and going on social media and complaining. I'm like, all right, how do I fix this shit for myself so I don't become a victim, you know, myself? Number two, I got very lucky. Shout out to my brother and mentor, you know, and partner in certain things, Gary Acosta. I was very fortunate to find a Latino from East LA who was a chemist major, so he's a nerd, but was awesome at hoops. And then he created the largest business trade association for Latinos, and he took a liking to me. He didn't judge me, and he would always tell me, listen, you're always 99% of your ideas are going to get turned down. You think Apple took Dr. Dre's first idea? You think Jay-Z gets everything said yes to him? He sits in a room, let's face it, full of Jews, non-blacks, to tell him he's wrong. But it's that one idea that makes him great. And so he really trained that mentality in me. And I developed a good relationship with him where he would tell me, you fucked up. And I have to learn how to get past that, you know? And so I think that's kind of like what I want to answer in that question you gave me, is that sometimes you just have to embrace the things that God puts in front of you and learn a lot, because he really shaped me into the business kind of my mentality that I am. And now I want to scale it. You know, I want to scale it because of the way you and I grew up. And los dos idiomas en la casa, you know, en el barrio, you know, lower income. And we have a responsibility that whether we like it or not, that's what has been given on folks like you and myself.
Yeah. And when you think about continuing to scale that, like, what's one thing that continues to empower and inspire you to do that and continue being yourself?
Merit, execution, goals achieved, right? So, you know, I didn't go to culinary school. So if the first year I did pop-ups, I sold out because it wasn't that I was good. I wanted to see if the market was willing to say that. So when I deal with, say you and I deal with Nestle, yeah, I did 9 pop-ups. Where'd you do the pop-ups? Were they friends? No, it was the largest food towns in the country. So that means people were willing to pay for me, right? Number 2, I've now have it in my radar to be real and as close to myself without, like you said, being authentic. Sometimes people, like my friend earlier, I'm a rebel. Why are you giving yourself credit for something that's rebellious? Give yourself credit after you achieved a multi-million-dollar company and you did it your own way. You know, Jay-Z can walk, he knew success when he can walk into any room as himself. And so I try to be like that. And the way you do it, because you're not going to imagine if you went to Facebook or your employer the way you address, at the Puerto Rican Day Parade, it just doesn't work, right? So I'm not saying go crazy. What I'm saying is put yourself in a situation where you're doing business in the realm of who you are, because it makes it easier. Sports, I'm already a sneakerhead. Latino world, shit, I am Latino as fuck, right? Latino AF. Food and music, I love it, man. So I don't need to be something I'm not. Now, if I want to go open up, a CPA firm, it's a little different. It's not me. I'd be insecure, So I think the way you overcome that, and if you're a kid, listen, there's no, I'm not gonna say this. There is so much opportunity. You can start an apparel company. You could put a store on Amazon. You could do the food game and scale it. Listen, just because you're selling food fresh to your complex, who cares what you're selling? If you're making $5,000-$6,000 a month on the side, that's $75,000 a year. And guess what happens? Then you open a brick and mortar. So there's so much opportunity in the comfort zone of what people want. And I think it just takes time to disconnect and say, what am I good at? Not what do I want to do? What am I good at? What am I great at? Because then you'll never work another day in your life.
Yeah.
Because if you love it, you won't quit. If you don't love it, then you're stupid to stay in something that's not working.
Yeah.